¿Ya estás de vuelta?
Sí, déjame mando esto para tener esta.
Entonces, ¿ya está grabando?
Ok, listo.
Listo, bueno. Entonces, voy a sacar aquí el documento donde vamos a leer. Muy bien. Pues ya admito a todo el mundo, ¿no?
Sí,
Ah, espérate que voy a anclarnos primero y así no aparece todo el mundo. Okay. Welcome, everyone. We're gonna wait just maybe 1 minute or 2 minutes more to let everyone jump in the call. Okay. Well, welcome everyone. I'm Camilo Otero, and I'm the Exhibitions and Publications Manager here at Center for Book Arts in New York. And we will be in conversation today with Leon Muñoz Santini. Um, this program takes place in the context of Gato Negro's Ediciones current exhibition at Center for Book Arts through May 10th. This exhibition presents a selection of over 100 titles published by Gato Negro in the past 10 years. Just a few housekeeping guidelines before we begin. The event is being recorded and live streamed on YouTube and will be available afterwards on our YouTube channel. Feel free to drop your questions during the conversation in the chat, and at the end, we'll have brief Q&A session. So if you want to jump in and like unmute your mics at the end, I'll let you know. Um, if you do not wish to appear on camera, you can keep your cameras off during the event. Leon Muñoz Santini from Mexico is a photographer, editor, and designer known for his work in editorial design and publishing. A graduate in political science from the Universidad Nacional Autónoma de México, he worked independently since 2002, developing projects for prominent institutions in Mexico and abroad, including Fondo de Cultura Económica, UNAM, el Colegio de México, UNESCO, and Canal 11, among others. His editorial collaborations include collections such as Poesía, Ciencia para Todos, and La Gaceta, as well as notable projects like 1968-2018, Poesía Joven, and Diario de la Pandemia. His work has received numerous accolades, including the IGA's 50 Books, 50 Covers, the Bologna Children's Book Fair's New Horizons Award, and multiple honors from the Cámara Nacional de la Industria Editorial Mexicana. He has shared his expertise through talks and workshops at institutions such as UCLA and the Jan van Eyck Academy. In 2013, he founded Gato Negro Ediciones, an independent publishing house that has published over 250 titles up to date. Muñoz Santini is also a member of the Alliance Graphique Internacional. Hello, Leon, and welcome.
Hi, hello everyone. Thanks for being here. Thanks Camilo for making this possible, and thanks for the Center for the Arts for hosting this conversation and exhibition that is still on display at the center.
So today, I wanted to invite Leon to talk a little bit about the relationships and the networks that he and his team have built with Gato Negro in the past 10 years, and how that has made Gato Negro's survival possible during this time. So I want to start by asking you, Gato Negro feels like a living organism. What has been your approach to building the human network around it? And if you could share how your relationships with writers, artists, designers, printers, and other collaborators have been cultivated over time.
Um, Maybe some little background is needed to properly answer your question. Talking about how Gato Negro started and how it has been its development over those years. This started, as you mentioned, 12 years ago. It's incredible. And at the beginning, this was a very instinctive initiative to make books coming after long years working on the business of the publishing industry. As you mentioned in the presentation, you mentioned a lot of projects that I have the chance and the privilege to make that now feels years or ages ago. And at first, this was a side project of a professional design practice as mostly a book designer. First, and I mention this frequently when we are invited to explain the project, that all the explanations about what is this about and the purposes that this project can fulfill has been retrospective. It's an explanation that we've been learning over time. At first was very unconscious as a way to create space to do to put in place all the ideas about what a book could do outside the needs and the presuppositions of being a professional designer. All the learning about what is possible to do and what is not possible to do with this, that's something that has been happening over time. And at first came this thing to arrive to an object, to arrive to the type of book that we would like to make outside of being subsidiary of a bigger process of the publishing industry. And then we somehow found all the possibilities that this could make. And it never was at the beginning, it even there was no like a project like that. It was like this impulse to make some publications on the learning of also of all the limitations that the process of publishing in a bigger context can make, but also what cannot make. No, so. And by some kind of expertise about how it's possible to to make books, and trying to find a way to subtract all the rest of things and economies and expectations about the publishing industry, and just to focus on making some doing the performance of crafting a book. We found that there was a way to do this with no expectations financially, economically, or even in circulation, by printing in a really small scale. That's how we found the technology of the risography, which is here. And at the beginning was to just to make a book to fulfill our needs of controlling that process, no? And somehow I suppose that that first approach created a methodology, a pathway to bring to the book form contents that otherwise could not get there usually, no? And by doing this, and by facing, okay, we have that object that somehow was fulfilling our needs. So something that also mentioned, and that's a recognition that, as I said, came after, is that at first this was a design project. Usually projects that occupy the space that now we occupy in terms of a political position about the circulation of certain contents. This we got there after doing this of making a very simple publication, no? And all the rest of the elements of the process of circulation came after, and came almost unintended, of having like those books somehow. The first independence was about, as I said, the need of the circulation of a book in terms of an industry. But then it was, okay, we have some books that we have made fulfilling our very personal tastes, and now what we can do with this. And like the very fulfilling and regarding and part of this came unintended by making this somehow being shared, or not ended up on a shelf of my studio. No, and after that, we took opportunity of every chance we got by doing this, and somehow by finding the interlocutions that this was making possible, that's how this ball started to roll. And in many ways, we've been running after that ball over those 12 years, no? And I don't know if I need to explain or somehow to 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 show or the books that we have made to explain that relation. But something that we learned was, as I mentioned, is that somehow being attached to this form of content and cultural circulation, that it's a book, it's being attached of the possibilities that this has, even at the most minimal expression. No, and that's this idea of a circle, of a process where somehow the book fulfills more than a need, fulfills a symbolic role in society, and is still relevant to place some contents in a way that is significant by its very existence. But because the these layers of cultural, social, historical force that a book involves. Even by doing this at a very small scale. As I repeat this thing of the very small scale, it's because how we still operate. Most of our books are printed in-house in this Riso machine, and usually with a print run that moves around hundreds of copies. And the idea is to reduce all the inputs around this process to get to the essential form of what the book is. And by doing this, hopefully creating this mechanism of precision, no? Of having the chance to bring to the book form very specific content. And playing with this contradiction in between these big social expectations about what a book is, but at these very humble positions of putting their small arguments, small ideas, small but powerful. This is always been, and this is another learning, this game of playing with those contradictions. No, somehow, as I was listening to you, Camilo, talking about what we do and how this can be perceived, there's always this parallel set of currents where one is the perception and the other is the reality. One is the expectation and the other is the intent. And usually it's like a contradiction in between those two currents, inertias, logics, and expectations. Maybe I'm going somewhere else with my answer, but somehow I want to share with you this set of considerations that comes along by doing this. I need 1 second because I need to open the door of the studio. So please give me 1 minute. Yes, sorry.
Okay,
So,
Leon, I'd like to direct our conversation. You were talking about these like this sort of difference between intention and expectations and like how can we talk a little bit about your how you build or how Gato Negro builds those relationships and those connections? Are you working with local artists from your personal network? How is your process of, like networking and integrating people in your project?
Yeah, as I mentioned before, this has been a process, and the learning about this has been retrospective, and the moments where this takes place change over time. No, and now at this moment, at this very morning, I would the word that comes to me is survival. It's like this survival instinct of keep doing the next and the next and the next. No. Eh, and this is a very organic relation, somehow based in a set of principles that could be different of what is expected of of a publishing outfit as a business, and usually is like a network of affinities and complicities. Somehow, um, what we try to make is to find this match in between the expectation from an author or a voice or an idea and the possibilities that we can provide of making this specific type of content, which is a book, and this specific type of circulation. And this specific, also, I would add this specific type of performance, which is what we do somehow. No, like as I sorry, ah, I lost the track, but as I was.
But you were talking about communicating like this specific type of circulation, this specific type of performance. I remember in a previous conversation, um, you mentioned one of the challenges of working with people many times was, um, like coming to an understanding that risograph is, like a medium that is going to be worth, like it's going to work with their specific project. Maybe you can talk a little bit about that sort of problematic that you encounter in building your projects.
Yes, I was mentioning this about the performance that somehow we found that we navigate like this militancy in this idea about I mentioned that sometimes that we are part of the holy church of the book, and with this idea of this specific object is has a specific language and a specific grammar, and it's by saying this, I'm saying that there are some kind of ideas, contents, intentions, stories that can only be told this way. And as I mentioned, this object comes along with a super loaded charge of a symbolic symbolic possibilities, and that's what we do. And by mentioning the performances that choosing this way of working, you limit a lot the possibilities of circulation in the way that these contemporary societies has organized to make circulate those contents. And working with the RISO, you can reduce, rescale this economy to a very small proportion. And like now, over the last 2 decades or something like that, there's been like a hype around this technology, and a lot of people. I suppose that's another conversation. Why this type of technology became so popular over the years, as a parallel of the eruption of the digital media everywhere in our lives, and how this instinctive reflection to go back to the printed matter, um, and why we choose and stick with this technology is more related to at a very specific scale to perform the performance of the book. And what, in very concrete terms, this is about that by working with the RISO machine, you can match the production prices of making a book in the scale of the thousands or the tens, with with cost per unit similar to the scale of the thousands of the offset or another type of technologies of massive circulation. Um, but beside some very specific graphic qualities that this technology has, all it's mostly how we see this is there's more limitations than possibilities of what you can print with a RISC machine. But there's a few things that you can do very well, and somehow we decided to go after those possibilities that this has. And by doing this and by choosing to be limited by this technology, also this is obvious, you create another set of possibilities, no? By reducing, you open. It's like another contradiction, no? And and this, as I mentioned before, that can be heard like an explanation to me that this was a design project, and then we found this amazing radical publishing thing. What I'm trying to say is that somehow these decisions has been also a design decisions in terms of design as a way to create a medium and to create a platform of precision and specificity. I don't know. I'm not sure if I'm answering your question.
Yeah, no, yeah. Also, I was asking specifically about that communication, but you are definitely giving the context of the usage of the technology. But talking specifically about how people perceive, especially in the context of this, what you're calling hype of use of risograph, um, do can you talk a little bit about your connections with the artist and the use of the technology?
Sure. Yes, as I mentioned, I was telling this before. What we found that we can do is somehow to creating this match in between some intentions, some ideas, some authorship, and this specific platform with this specific set of threads. No? And by insisting of the smallness and this decision to inhabit the peripheries of the market, the peripheries, so somehow like we learn like by inhabiting the peripheries of the market and the industry, we should inhabit the peripheries of the conversation, and to being a medium to give voice to contents that otherwise could not get access to this form, this what the book is and can say, and opening this, being more broad, what the printed matter can do. So going this to more specific terms, we work with authors that present us or that they carry ideas or projects that somehow what we can do can enhance this work. And as by working on those margins, we are forced, and also it's a decision to work in an economy that usually it's demonetized. It's the proper way to say it in English, and it goes back to the terms of exchange and collaboration. Usually, this has to be a relation where both parts are beneficiated by this endeavor. Endeavor, yes. Um, and by doing this over time, I think something, and also we take pride of this, have the chance to build a catalog, to build a series of publications that somehow that's something also we learned is that the publisher's authorship is a catalog. That's where you, because that's maybe another topic of conversation, and this other contradiction that by building a practice like this, where somehow there's a lot of design elements, of authorship elements in the way you decide that you are forced to make this possible. The sense of authorship of doing this is by building a catalog, by building a set of different contents that somehow establish a conversation, and in the conversation in between all those different titles, and inhabiting together the same bookshelf, let's say. And somehow what we try to make is to expand the layers and the extensions of this conversation in between different voices. And also, and this is like a very topic in, is that the other ways to create value when you demonetize, or mostly demonetize this practice, is about creating value through social relations. No, it's a form of friendship, it's a form of empathy, it's a form of sharing and being part of the voice, the idea that an author brings to this outfit. I don't know if that's a proper
Yeah,
answer.
that makes total sense. So can you tell us a little bit about how this catalog is distributed, how it circulates, and how has Gato Negro strategized in terms of sharing their contents around? Because I know you are present in many like domestic and international affairs. How how has that worked?
Um, as I mentioned before, this has been a learning over time. And and this notion that this morning is present to me of survival and instinct, um, and it's not like a related to a basic need, but I don't know how I could name this will, this force to keep doing this. But somehow like the performance produce usership, and the usership produce multiplication. And these two more pragmatic and concrete terms, it's somehow by making your own networks of circulation, and some maybe the very central part of it is that this has a bigger explanation, and the consequences of this are bigger for our societies, but um, um, it's by doing it by yourself and by doing it by hand. Somehow, like this artisanal, this, how would you say artisanal?
Handcrafted or
This handcrafted part
yourself.
of this practice that still now most of our books, big part of it is made by hand at the end, like this. You can see our table where this is being doing. This is the process is happening, and there's a big part of craft of trade of on this, and this extends to make this circulate this by hand and by carrying books where you go. And because the channels of circulation and distribution of contents of the industry that somehow we are by decision, and this later became in part a political decision of being outside of this. It's being outside of the channels of distribution of the industry because the scale and the economy is different. So yeah, at the end, it's making a lot of direct sales. It's traveling with the books. It's doing a lot of book fairs, and it's building a live and present a relation with the possible readers, with the other part of the cycle, as I said, of this, and also by. One thing I mentioned at my chaotic introduction to this is that this ball that started to roll is that you find on the way of this a lot of complicities on this. And by pulling the threads of all those complicities. More concrete is we're not alone doing this, and we found a community of people, of makers, of pairs of this practice, and somehow being part and foster that community. So going closing to more concrete terms is by doing a lot of book fairs here and abroad, and and trying to be present on the networks of circulation of this that somehow take advantage of this type of production. No, there's bookstores here and abroad that our content is interesting. Somehow by and that's another contradiction, that somehow you make the performance of making a book that has a lot of share a lot of characteristics with a trade commercial usual book, but also it's a different object. It's it's a handcrafted object. It's the contents are different, are more radical, are more counterintuitive of what a book usually does. So it inhabitates this place of being an artistic object. So by circulate over the channels of, but it's that's another conversation. We play a subsidiary role in the art world, but somehow we are close to it. And but it's a sum of all those channels that makes this circulation possible.
And you were talking a minute ago about the readers and your direct audience, which you encounter at fairs and um, I guess conventions, traveling. And can you tell us a little bit more about Gato Negro's audience or readers?
Yes, or maybe not. As I mentioned at the beginning, at the first impulse of doing this, there was no reader considered at all. It was more about a self-reflection of our practice. And um, one way to say this is to make to reach this idea of the type of book that you would like to make or see or have. So like the first the first interlocution, the first objective by doing this was not someone else, but it was for us. And this somehow is still like this. And I think we would make a mistake even more by working on this scale and with inhabiting this space that we mentioned before, to trying to fulfill or to grasp or to catch some kind of what the reader would want or what we could do to sell more. I would think that it's more the relation with an author that crafts the type of content we make. And also by doing this, like giving the back to this way of circulation, and also I would like to mention this that could be part of the answer, that somehow how the book in the contemporary world has evolved is in the physical threads of what a book is like this crystal vessel for content. This is the idea, and where usually the functions of the book is to make the content as transparent as possible. And all the characteristics a book have, it's in order to be attractive and to circulate commercially and to sell books, goes in that direction. Usually a book has a book cover that trying to explain you why this book is amazing and necessary and you need to spend on it. All how the book is designed is in terms of clarity and so on. We think that we have created this space where you have the luxury to not to attend this, and you have the chance to make a book that by design can be obscure, that by design or by decision can hide the content, by design can be weird, by design all that, that somehow it's counterintuitive of what you need to do with a book to make it circulate and to be attractive to the broadest number of readers. No? So since we're not there, we do not try to do that usually. That has changed over time, but usually, since you have the chance of going weird and going and somehow trying to honor the intention of a content, so the short answer is like at the equation, what the reader would want usually is not present, but something, and that's one of the most rewarding things of this practice and this story, is that there's always someone, a reader for every content, even though more obscure, weird, specific, there's a reader for that. And usually one of the greatest luxuries of privilege of this is witnessing when that match happens. And possibly for you, Camilo, because you also have a publishing practice, you also have the chance of witnessing this when some given content finds a match. And also by, as I say, by being outside of the of the scale and the presuppositions of the publishing industry, where you try to do the most and you're trying to level the characteristics of your content to being appealing to the broadest public. You try to here to reduce that somehow to being more precise. Um, but as I said, we have learned that there's readership for every type of content and the type of content what we do. And there's somehow we try to foster and being part of this community of weirds, trying to or being I forgot the word for that for this type of content. No, and yeah, so more or less that's the
Thank you. Now we have like 10 more minutes, and I would like to open the space for the people in the audience now to comment, ask any questions, and welcome them in the conversation. If there's any questions or comments or things.
I have a question.
Yeah. Hi.
Hi. So I just wanted to know, how did you start like expanding your work international wise? Like how was that? How did that work? How was the process of it?
um, the process as I mentioned before. And as everything at the beginning was quite unintended, uh, um, um, as I said, how we started doing this was about trying to get rid of everything you don't need to get given content into the book form. And in this process of subtraction, we started to print books in English by this idea that if I can read it, why I would need to pay for a translation if the main goal of this is to fulfill my vanities about what a book should be. And at the very beginning, we found ourselves having like a handful of books in English, mostly essays, that at that moment we were interested on reading it on what this type of content. And we were invited by chance to be part of a book fair in LA, the Layer Book Fair in 2014. And by being there, we suddenly found that there was interest for this outside the very constrained circle of public that we could find here in Mexico City. And and that was like the first stage of understanding that okay, this is a community. This is there are more people doing this. We found pairs. We found complicities, and that was the beginning. The beginning, and then also we learned that the contents that we were printing, making as books, somehow opened the conversations that were different that the word we could find here. And And also in the going after this survival instinct, we found that there was even at this very small scale an economical perk by doing this, somehow replicating what now the government of your country tries to stop, that producing here and selling there, the margin of profit that we could have by selling a book was bigger. Um, and then it was all about going after this rolling ball in ladder. And after that, over years, this came with a lot of intention, like being very, very aware about how what we were doing was received elsewhere, and mostly in the States and Europe. It's not like a huge global circulation. It's like being part of those spaces. And how this was received for the good and the bad reasons, and taking advantage of that, and also um, yes, like understanding with a lot of intent that this idea to make possible the circulation of some contents in this form was relevant in a bigger context. Yeah, more or less something like that.
Thank you.
Great, thank you.
Leon, we have a question here in the chat from Jillian Lee. Hi, Jillian. When did you establish the iconic Gato Negro color scheme? Is there another color you'd ever want to introduce regularly?
Yes, we established this, as I mentioned, everything unintended, because that's the Rizzo drums that we purchased at the beginning. We purchased the 4 drums, and we still are working with these same 4 drums with those. And we purchased this by second hand by a seller in New Jersey. And that's what we received. Was pink, orange, and at the beginning was a teal color, like this blue grayish, dark blue grayish Riso ink. And that one, we changed that one like 3 years ago to this gold color. And then we decided to keep working with this constrained palette of colors. First, because that what we could afford at that moment, and then because the same I mentioned before, that by having a lot of constraints, you somehow create a lot of possibilities. And one of them is, it's a simple way to have an identity and to have I forgot the word, but and by this idea that those constraints are possibilities, and possibly a semi-conscious reflection over this hypeness about the Rizzo thing, that having a lot of colors, and by having a lot of colors was the main point of this practice. And and somehow, like for the purpose of this, that somehow this idea, which is also there's like recover that, but it's about the content, not about how you print with those colors. Nowadays, at this moment, if I could have the chance to purchase another machines and to have 20 colors, I would go there. But that's the story.
Well, if we don't have any more questions. I'd like to thank everyone for being with us today. Thank you so much, Leon, for your time and for sharing your experience and ideas with us. I want to invite all of you, if you still haven't seen it, um, there. There Was a Shadow, Then Came a Book, the exhibition that shows a selection of Gato Negro's publications, and it will be up here at Center for Book Arts until May 10th. So we hope to see you here.
Thank you. Thanks, Camilo.
So much, Leon. Take care.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.